Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to 2025. This is our VCF webinar series. Got a lot of familiar faces out in the audience today. Um, so we're going to be keeping the party going like we did last year. We're going to try and get a webinar out to you a couple times a month. And the purpose of these webinars is to talk about VCF and VCF related topics. And these are super interactive webinars. So don't hesitate to jump in, ask questions. We want to hear from you. The Q&A is open. So please take advantage of the Q&A with questions. On top of our presenters today, we also have helpers behind the scenes who will be helping with the Q&A in that segment. Please don't use the chat for Q&A because what we'd like to do is we like to record these questions to be able to use them later with our recording as we socialize the recordings of these sessions. That said, we do actually have recordings of these sessions set up. There will be a link in the chat, but it's at go-vmware.broadcom.com/VCF webinars. You'll be able to find the recording for this session as well as our previous sessions. That said, we do have some good sessions geared up. We're going to get rolling here again with a pretty regular cadence on getting these sessions out. So be sure to check there for the upcoming webinars as well. In other news, our Explore team is already on it. We've got Explore coming up already, August 25th through 28th, 2025. I know that's a few months away, but you know how that is. You blink and it's here. So be sure to go ahead and keep an eye on that when registration's open. We're keeping on with the Explore program. Had a great year last year, both in the US and Barcelona. Got a little bit different plan for our how we're presenting in the geos. Actually, there's going to be more events in more places, but the US is going to be our staple and stay the same. So be sure to keep your eyes out on that and be ready to register when that opens up. Can have a lot of good content. So that's enough from me. Let's get into why you're here. We've got Puneet Chawla and Mike McLaughlin here with us today. And gentlemen, you can go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks. I understand. Hi, everybody. My name is Puneet Chawla. I'm with Broadcom. Been with team for approximately like 10 years, mostly focusing on networking and migration side of the house. And I also have Mike. Mike would like to introduce, please.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Mike McLaughlin here with Broadcom and VMware, and been working in the recovery space for probably a decade or so. And I'll be picking up the tail end of today's session. So I'll let you take it away, Puneet.
Thanks, Mike. So we're very excited about this session. Thanks very much for joining. And predominantly, we were talking about different solutions that can help you adopt VCF to migrate towards VCF. And right, let's start with our agenda. So we divided the session in 4 pieces, and I'll quickly talk about the journey map of the migration. And then we have 3 different solutions that we will cover in the session, and that really is the meat of the product. We'll go overview of HCX, overview of VCF Import Tool, and overview of VMware Live Recovery that Mike will cover. Let's start with the journey map. I wanted to include this slide and maybe take a little bit time here, because when I talk to a lot of customers who are in the beginning of this moving to VCF, most of the time the question is, hey, where would I start? I don't even know the starting point. So we last couple of years, after talking to a lot of customers, we created this journey map, and basically it gives you a little bit guide to where you might, start, or where other customers are starting their journey. And the first stop is the assessment. You need to know what you have in terms of current environment. Within your environment, your current inventory, what kind of hosts do you have, how many vSpheres, networking wise, what kind of networks do you have, what sort of storage are you using. And a lot of customers either do a really good job with their inventory, they're very religious about naming conventions, and know exactly what type of applications they have within the environment. And on the other hand, with some customers, they inherit these environments from either M&As or from previous coworkers, and don't know what's happening. So this will be a good starting point to really understand what you have as within an inventory of your product. And within VCF, there are tools that you can use, which is part of VCF, included in VCF, like VCF operations, that will help you assess what you have environment-wise. You have, as I mentioned, how many vSpheres, how many, what the inventory look like within those vSphere, what kind of resources you're using in terms of compute, memory, and storage, and get that kind of assessment. And we also have VCF network operations. It's a new name of the product that used to know VMware or vRealize Network Insight, aka Verni, and this will help you either through net flows or naming convention, or however you grouped with tags and whatnot, and provide you a really nice picture of your applications level, that these certain virtual machines build up your application, and these are the ports it communicates on, and really provide you the dependency map of those applications, and also provide you information on the inventory of those applications in terms of resources. So that's a really good starting point to understand what you have today. So as you can see, most of this talk, these three solutions are for the customer who are already VMware vSphere customers, right? And looking to migrate to VCF. So we'll keep that focus throughout this session. And then the next phase, of course, after assessment is the planning. Okay, I have an understanding. These are my virtual machines. These are the VMs that make certain application. How would I plan this migration? Will I do a lift or shift of the data center itself, or maybe I'll do it in the waves, one application at a time, or maybe by the cluster level or rack level, or networking wise, I migrate all the virtual machines that are in certain network. So all these needs to be planned out. What are my timeline? Can I have downtime in this? And do I want to do upgrades as I'm migrating for my VM hardware or certain things? Or do I want to change the IP addresses of these virtual machines? All these needs to be planned. And the planning phase is when you will be doing all that work. And of course, we have VCF network operations, aka Verni, that will help you plan this, because with the latest version, it actually gives you step-by-step instruction on how to plan a migration, and from discovery that we did in the assess phase to the later in the migration. And we also have HCX that can help you with the planning, because HCX has a feature called mobility and mobility groups, that basically where you can, these are dynamic groups where you can create, these set of virtual machines will, let's say, migrate first in the first wave. This is the network it will use to migrate. And on the destination side, this is the cluster it will migrate to using for certain storage and IPs if you want to change the IPs. So you can determine all that in the group, and these are dynamic groups, and you can schedule that ahead of time, create all your waves within that mobility groups, and do your planning through the mobility group. And next is the security. Security is going to be multiple phases, right? It's not just one and done. And we see have a lot of features available here. Things like you have to see, how your firewall rules are set up today. how they are getting migrated, who are migrating them. There might be another team who's doing it, so communication with those teams. If you are using NSX TFW today, how those will get migrated. You have tags on your virtual machine. HCX can help you move those tags. So all this needs to be looked into. Another phase of this security piece is the network that I've built between these two sites, which HCX can do. Is that network secure enough? Can I do encryption? And you can, right, with HCX. So is the network going to public, or is it all private? I don't need encryption. All those kind of decisions need to be made, and you have all these options available within the VCF products to do it. Another question that customer asks is, my virtual machine is encrypted, can I migrate those? And HCX can handle that. So these are all the different security pieces that you have to look into, and there are different tools within VCF that can help you, either from HCX to VCF network operation and a vDefend firewall, help you make sure that security is there before you migrate your virtual machines. And next, of course, is the migration itself. And in here, I have three solutions: HCX, Live Recovery, and VCF Import. And we'll go over these three in detail in next slides. And most bulk of the time we will spend will be in this migration section. So let's start with the VCF Operations HCX, or VCF HCX. HCX is a solution. It's a migration and mobility solution that has been part of our portfolio from a very long time. It's a very mature product. We have done, last year we announced we have done over 1 million migration in production that customer have done through using HCX. And what it basically does, it help you migrate virtual machines from your vSphere, or if you have non-vSphere, you might be using other hypervisors like KVM or Hyper-V. So it will help you migrate those virtual machines that are running on this hypervisor to VCF. And with HCX, we don't need to deploy an agent within the operating system, guest operating system, and you can do it non-disrupted. So you can use the vMotion capabilities to move these virtual machine live between sites. And so you can do it without downtime, and you can also do these migration to any VCF. So either VCF you deployed in your on-premises as a private cloud, you can migrate to that. Or if you are looking into migration to public cloud, like AVS or GCVE, all these different hyperscalers who have VCF as a service, you can migrate over there non-disruptively and in a bulk number of virtual machines at a time. So let's look into it, how HCX does that. It provides two sets of capabilities. One is by the networking. So it builds the pipeline between two data centers. Where are you doing the migration from to? So source and destination. It builds that networking pipeline for you. And it's an IPsec tunnel, and you can build multiple IPsec tunnels, and you can encrypt that and do network engineering to make it faster and more secure. So there are a lot of different knobs that are available for you. These are optional knobs you can play with too within this networking piece. And once your network is set up between two sites, and I'll quickly bring up that you could do this, build this network over public network. If you're using internet, you can do over private, you can do over VPN if you have, or if you have any direct connect or a bigger link between your data centers to the public cloud, you can utilize those networks also to build this HCX pipeline on top. Once you have the pipeline up and running, there are different migration types that is available to you. You can use those in order, whichever use case you have, things like bulk migration or replication assisted vMotion, and HCX assisted vMotion. So these are the name of the few, and we will go in details in those migration types. Depending on your use cases, you can use these different migration type to move the virtual machines from source to destination. How HCX does that? So I created a really simple diagram on the data center A, which is, you have just vCenter, and data center B, where you have your VMware Cloud Foundation deployed. And what you do is you add another virtual appliance called HCX Connect or HCX Manager, and it has two different roles. One is the Connect and one is the Cloud. Even the name of the appliance is Cloud. It doesn't mean it has to be on the cloud. It could be on your private cloud also, so on your on-premises. And once you deploy these two virtual appliances, you do a handshake between them so they know about each other. And from there, HCX Manager, which has one-to-one relationship with your vSphere, you automatically deploys another appliance called HCX IX or Interconnect. And this is all you need in order to start the migration between your sites. But if you enable other features like when optimization, another virtual appliance automatically get deployed. If you do network extension, so you do not want to change IP addresses, and you would like the communication to smoothly happen still between source and destination while you're migrating between waves, you can do that. You can extend your L2 network between sites, and when you do that, automatically another virtual appliance get deployed, and all these appliances get deployed as pair. So one on the source side and one on the destination side. So here's a simple diagram to kind of give you an overview what makes up this HCX solution. So now you deployed the HCX solution. Let's say what this will enable you to do. So you can do up to 1,000 virtual machine migrations at a time. And this could be either live migration or warm migration, means you can do a reboot of the virtual machines at the destination side. You can do up to 25 site pairs. So in the previous simple diagram, I only had 2 sites. You can do up to 25 sites connected with one HCX manager, and it will allow you to migrate up to 62 terabyte storage at a time for one virtual machine. So quite high scale, and it's been designed, to do big migration. Just want to make sure you guys can see my screen. I'm getting some notification on my screen. Simon, everything is working okay?
Yes,
okay,
all is good. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. So once you made this deployment, your network is up, you understand you have a nice big scale to do this migration. It will also enable you to have different type of migration types that you can utilize depending on your use cases. And there are 6 of them that you can pick from, and you can do a mix match. You don't have to stick to one. You can do certain waves using one and other waves using a different migration type. And I have a couple slides to go a little bit in details for the bulk and the wrap, which is the first 2. And for the last 4, I'll quickly go over it in the slide. HCX assisted vMotion is basically your regular vMotion, but it's been orchestrated from HCX. What that means is all your regular vMotions, you can do it from HCX, and the good thing is now you can do it as a schedule. So if you do vMotion from your vCenter, it happens right away, but you can schedule it with HCX, and it also had a very nice live logs to kind of give you insight of what got vMotioned, and also keep track of these virtual machines. Cold migration is, you turn off the virtual machine and move it on the destination side. There are benefits to that also. And operating system assisted migration, in short, we call it OSAM, is the migration type that you can use to migrate from maybe Hyper-V or KVM into VCF. And this is the only migration type that's required Sentinel agent to be deployed on the operating system, because we don't have control over the hypervisor in that scenario. But this could be used to migrate to the VCF, and this is also your required downtime for this type of migration. For the most part, I've seen customer using either bulk migration, which is the first one in the row, and the RAV migration, which does not require downtime. So let's go over those two in a little bit details. So bulk migration, how it works is, have source and destination, and you can do up to 1,000 virtual machine at a time. You can migrate a big number of virtual machine or a very large virtual machine. And when you start the migration, provide the networking information, and on the destination side, you provide the information like, where is it going in terms of VCF cluster, what compute it's using, what kind of memory allocation or the storage it's going to be using. So you provide all that information, and then you can schedule the time that I would like it to be migrated or switch over, maybe Saturday at 11 p.m. And when you do that, HCX will start replicating the storage bits by bits on the destination side right away. And once that is done, it will pause and will wait for that cutover time whenever you have scheduled. You can obviously override that and can do it right away if you want, but whatever your schedule time is, it wait for there. And every 2 to 4 hours, it will do a delta sync to make sure that whatever changes has been made on the source side reflects on the destination side. And whenever that cutoff time happens, then it will do the final delta sync, and the state of the VM changes from source to destination. On the source side, we shut off the virtual machine. It still remains there because it's a migration. It remains there, but it's in a shut off state. And of course, on the destination side, we turn that on and make sure it's up and running. Cool things about this is bulk migration is we do a reboot, forced reboot on the destination side. That will allow you to do a lot of different things like IP address change. If you like to do MAC address change, you want to do your VM tools upgrade, you want to do the VM hardware version upgrade, you want to run some postscripts after the migration for your operating system applications, whatnot. You can do all those options available to you through bulk migration. But if you say no, that sounds great, but I really do not have use case where I can shut down my virtual machine for even a minute. We have another migration type called replication assisted vMotion. So this is a vMotion, and it's the best of both worlds in terms of bulk migration and vMotion. So we do a similar thing. We migrate everything. You can schedule it. We can replicate it, and I actually have in the next screen, I have a really nice flow chart that provides you this information. So we replicate and wait until the delta time is sync is needed. And once that happens, we do the vMotion. But because it's a vMotion, there is obviously no copy on the source side because that how vMotion works. And on the destination side, you get the virtual machine, and there is no downtime in this scenario. So you can do a live migration between data centers up to 1,000 virtual machines, and all that big number I showed earlier, all that is supported, and no agents are required for this type of migration or the bulk migration. So a lot of customers really like this approach, and they get to build the VCF on the new site from scratch and move the virtual machines, and they can do it in waves, and then of course also maybe move the racks and bring more compute or resources on their destination side. The next, so this is one solution that you have, very powerful solution to do this migration. The next one is the VCF Import Tool. This is a newer technology that came out with VCF 5.2 release, and we're super excited about this. This basically enables customer to bring their existing vCenter, so your vCenter environment, into a VCF environment. So you're not really doing a migration of any virtual machine. You're bringing the whole environment into the VCF environment. So you don't have to do data center migration using this VCF tool, and this really energize and accelerate your VCF journey. It can get you onboarded or adopt VCF really fast. So we're really excited about this, and it is divided in two core functionalities. So those functionalities are your convert and import. And we'll talk about the convert first. So what convert allows you to do is, if you have a vSphere cluster, you can bring that within the VCF management cluster. So you can convert your existing maybe management you might have on the vSphere side cluster into the VCF management cluster. And the way it works is, today we don't have a UI. It's a CLI based tool that you use. Here's the quick bit of a CLI that you could use, and you can convert your VCF vCenter cluster into VCF management domain. It's pretty straightforward process. There are certain requirements in terms of the version you're using on the vCenter side, and we are improving on this with every release. As I mentioned, it came out at VCF 5.2. So it will allow you to convert. That's the first one. And then the second one is the import itself. So this is where you can bring your VCF and import it as your VI workspace or domain within your VCF. And again, that's a command line. So here's a quick snippet of the Python command that you could use in order to bring in your vCenter within the VCF VI workload domain, and this is an import process. A good thing to know about this is, there is of course no migration happening within the data center. You can bring in your own topology. So whatever you have in the you worked on the vCenter for maybe years or decades, you don't have to change that to bring it in. And the way it works is VCF Import Toolkit goes within the vCenter. It do the discovery of all your inventory, your clusters, how is it, and maybe the port groups and all that information, and import that within the SDDC manager. So it recognizes your vCenter, and going forward, you get benefit of lifecycle management within the vCenter, certificate management, password management, all that benefit comes in. And the way you do the sync, it just shows the process of running that command line, and then after the sync has happened, your SDDC manager now have this new vCenter as a workload domain. So very exciting technology, and it makes life really easy, right? To start with VCF and enable you to adopt it fast. So I think these are the slides I have from my side for HCX and VCF import. If you have any questions on this, please put it on the Q&A, and me, or we have few PMs and people helping us with the chat today. They'll be happy to answer these questions. And I'll hand it over to Mike.
Thanks, Puneet. Let's switch over here to looking at live recovery as an option for your migration activity. And I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes just doing a high-level kind of walkthrough of what might seem a little unnatural migration use case. When I say failover to your VCF site, we're going to kind of walk through what that means. So why use your disaster recovery tool for migration? Well, hopefully you have a disaster recovery tool in place. And think of this as another alternative use case that you could have. Where for disaster recovery, those are the reactive situations where you need to just fail over to another site. Well, what if you set up the other site as your new VCF environment? And what you'd like to do is essentially, in a very controlled, planned failover migration, move your workloads over there. Now, one of the questions that came up is a workload. Could be a single VM, it could be a set of VMs. We're going to talk a little bit about organizing those with this tool and how we can get around that. But one of the common use cases of the DR tools, especially in the testing and practice and setup and configuration, is to migrate workloads to the other site, make sure they work. And the only difference is in a migration, you tend to stay there. With a DR tool, you tend to fail back and run them back in your original site. And here the original site will be your existing non-VCF environment. Okay, so we're going to leverage some of your infrastructure investments. There are going to be some caveats, so let's kind of walk through what's going on there. The preparation for migration, Puneet already mentioned a couple of things, is look at your existing infrastructure. We'll need to understand what it is that you have in place running now in your current VMware environment that you want to run in one of the workload domains in your new VCF infrastructure. And that assessment and that planning are great pre-steps. Oftentimes these come along with doing disaster recovery preparation too. All right. Now, the one caveat here is migration with a recovery tool will be a cold transfer of operations. All right, this isn't live transfer. This isn't a vMotion. This isn't a live move the VM while it's still running and then at the last minute change its location. Typically, recovery tools are going to take a point in time, power off, and start at the new site. So there will be some. So this might not be applicable for all workloads. The networks in the new site need to be defined so we can map things in there, but they don't necessarily have to be interconnected and fully operational to each other at that time. So this gives you some flexibility in staging that work to the new VCF site. And one of the things that I like is that you can test this ahead of time. Now, some of the questions that were coming up as we move into the VCF framework in 2025 and the various versions coming out and all of the tools and VVF, VCF, pay attention to a lot of the compatibility that we publish on our interoperability matrices. We're going to keep that up to date so that you can look at point-to-point situations between specific versions and products. We're giving you a general guidance today in a very short amount of time. So let's talk a little bit about using a recovery tool as migration. Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to get the data to the other side. So we're going to use a replication mechanism. Now, this could be the built-in vSphere replication. It could be even vVol's replication if you have that, or array-based replication to your new site. We just need to get the workload VM data to the other side. We're not going to transfer operations just yet, but we're going to set it up so that the old site and the new site have a copy of the data. All right, and you have some choices of your replication mechanisms, and the orchestration is going to be the thing that we're going to layer in at the last minute for using a recovery tool for migration. Now, when we talked about workloads, I could say an individual virtual machine is a workload. Inside of an individual work machine is a workloads maybe, but in reality, often multiple things work together, and we're going to protect them as protection groups. And your recovery tool gives you a very clean and convenient way of organizing a lot of that data that came out of the assessment and planning stage into protection groups, which are sets of virtual machines that you want to handle together from site to site. All right. And in this case, I can actually build those protection groups, begin replicating the data, And then I can build those into different, and we're going to call them recovery plans, even though they will be a one-time use migration activity when it's finally done. But I can organize those independently. So I have a lot of flexibility here for picking up the workloads from the existing environment, testing them in my new VCF environment. Non-disruptive DR testing is a natural feature. And then when the time comes, take that brief outage and fail those workloads over, quote, migrate them to the new site and move on. So this gives us one method of moving those workloads through. Running a recovery plan, fairly straightforward. If you're familiar with disaster recovery and failover and failback, this is probably makes sense. But notice that second stop. Power off the VMs. We're going to basically shut down the production site and bring them up at your new VCF location. This is going to be one of the ways of migrating workloads into your new VCF infrastructure. And it'll follow the orchestration right through the recovery plans that you define. All right. So think of it this way: there's basically reactive disaster recovery, and I hope most of you have an infrastructure in place that handles that. That if your current site becomes unavailable, you have a place to run your workloads, you run your applications, run your business. And what I'm saying here is possibly leveraging some of the functionality of that capability. Now, VMware Live Recovery has that built into it. So it's going to be built off of natively vSphere replication if you want, or other mechanisms. And it'll basically give us the ability to have our disaster recovery between your current site and your new VCF implementation. But what we're going to do now is do a very proactive failover, non-disruptively maybe in test, get familiar with the VCF environment, make sure everything's working there, leave things running in your production environment until you're ready. And then at that point, actually use the recovery plans that you've defined that have the collection of virtual machines into protection groups, setting up your workload boundaries. And your recovery plans have a very nice orchestration step. It talks about the order of events, the sequences and dependencies, a number of things that will actually happen at that migration step. And then we know that they'll actually be recovered or migrated to your new VCF environment and started up in a very predictive or proactive order. And so what we're saying here is this is just one of the possible approaches to getting your current environment into a new VCF production environment as we move forward into this year with the VCF full function stack. A number of things at the vSphere, vCenter, NSX, vSAN, there's a number of layers. Those will all work in between your current environment and your target new VCF environment. So I went through this fairly quickly. It's just another option or another consideration for how you might get from your VCF, from your current environment to the new VCF environment that we're bringing out with the VMware solutions today. And what I want to do is just a quick summary here, and then we're going to go back and look and see if there's some questions in the Q&A section. But we've looked at the general journey, getting from your current environment. I can't stress the importance of doing the assessment and planning. Now, there are tools in the current VMware ecosystem to help you do that. You may have some tools, you may recruit some tools from professional services. But the idea is, if you're going to be moving from your current VMware environment into a new VCF environment, you're going to be standing up a new data center, a private cloud to run your workloads. That first step of assessment and planning is really critical. And what I've seen in working with customers for the last several years in the disaster recovery space is that's also something that you need to do disaster recovery. So some of that work may already be done. You may have already figured out how things have to move in what order and what the dependencies are. And that assessment may already be in place, but there are some additional tools and methods that we talked about earlier in this session to do that. And that will get you to a point where you at least have a scope of what's going to move to the new environment. And we looked at using HCX as one mechanism of moving those workloads seamlessly between the two environments as they're connected. We looked at using import tools to pull workloads into the new environment. All right. And I talked briefly about using VMware Live Recovery And in this case, we're using the live site recovery capabilities to actually set up relationships between your current production and your new VCF environments, and working through the transitions there of migrating those workloads using a recovery tool and getting the benefits of non-disruptive testing, uh, efficient replication and timing, but there will be a little bit of a downtime in using a recovery tool to do your migration. And that was just one of the things I wanted to point out here. And so I wanted to make sure that we sort of summarize that. There's a number of things that we didn't get a chance to get into today, a lot of the details, but I left some notes in the questions, and by all means, check out our interoperability matrices, check out the VMware.com website, and I know somebody was asking, there'll probably be some more webinars like this as we move closer and closer to rolling out VCF throughout the VMware installed base throughout 2025. So I was going to say, let's take a moment here. We've got a couple of minutes left for the session. Were there any questions that came up in the session? I touched on a couple here live that I know that I saw go by. And I just wanted to make sure if there was anything that we didn't get to, we'll take a moment here and just kind of review the questions or the Q&A window. One question here, a way to estimate the downtime. Well, that's actually the interesting thing is if you're talking about using VMware Live Recovery, is in the disaster recovery space, we really emphasize practice or testing. And so you could actually, without disrupting your production environment, without taking down operations, let the workloads continue to run, you could mimic what those failovers are going to look like into your VCF environment. And it's going to be a combination of how long it takes to get the last bit of data over there, the last replication, how long it takes to start up VMs. You're going to have to power things down and back on. There's a controlled environment. So the easiest way, and I hate to say this, easiest way to estimate the downtime in almost any of these is to use your new environment and practice or test before actually pressing the migrate button on the production workloads. You want to make sure that that transition is as quick as possible. Otherwise, you might need to look at some of the things we talked about a little bit earlier that provide a little bit more of a live migration, a little bit less downtime, but maybe a little bit more, I'll just say, I don't want to say complicated, but a little bit more things involved to have the two environments seamlessly tied together as that workload moves. Okay, lots of questions coming in.
Lots of people in the audience.
Yeah. So I'm wondering how we can get answers to all these questions in the few minutes that are left.
Well, we can run over a little bit if folks are wanting to stick around. We actually kind of pencil in the QA time is more of a recommendation than a hard boundary. So let's kind of nibble at some of the top ones here and see how we're doing.
Yeah, I was going to say that we've answered close to 60 questions, and there's still a handful left. Some of these things, even we probably don't have the firm answer to, like exact dates and version compatibilities, and that's why we have the online resources for that.
Mm-hmm.
One question here at the bottom, I see Live Recovery. It is actually a standalone product. Just real quick, Live Recovery is the protection umbrella that now sits over what was Site Recovery Manager, VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery. It will be picking up the new vSAN data protection capabilities, and even vCloud Director Availability all fit under Live Recovery. So that's an umbrella. It's a set of products that are layered on top of VCF to help you protect your VCF environment or recover your VCF environment. Okay. All right, I think with that, I'm going to move to this slide so we can wrap up. The recording time is on time, and we can stay online and skim through some of these questions live. Probably be easier than trying to type in answers for every one of them. Okay. Scroll back to the top here. I noticed a couple of questions coming in about vCloud Director and the VCF environment, and that is something that will be the tighter integration as we move into later this year. vCloud Director is essentially it's a multi-tenant environment built on VMware technologies. The multi-tenancy capabilities of the VMware Cloud Foundation or VCF product probably won't show up until the VCF 9 timeframe. So some of the things we're talking about today is addressing what you can do today with the VCF 5.2 environments and your existing VMware infrastructures. A question here about live recovery and local backups and the integration. That's one where I'm going to defer to some of the interoperability matrices, but the live recovery replication mechanisms and local backups, there are some caveats there, and it might be something you just need to work around, but it should be an operational environment. You might end up with 2 copies of your data, one in your backup, in your local third-party backup solution, and another copy in your live recovery replication, but we should be able to figure a path for that. Okay.
All righty. We got time for 1 or 2 more here. Or I know I'm watching the helpers are busily typing away.
Yeah, one question here about legacy VMware 5.5 and 6 environments to VCF. One of the things I would highly recommend is to go to the VMware interoperability tool, and there is an upgrade path capability on there. And 5.5 and 6 environments are probably at this point mostly out of support, and getting to a current vSphere environment is very likely going to be a prerequisite to getting into the versions of VCF, whether it's VCF 5 or VCF 9. So it's going to be one of these things where if you go back and look at the legacy deprecated, out of support solutions, there's probably an upgrade path in there somewhere. It might be a couple of steps. The thing with the VCF environment is we are changing the overall architecture of the full stack management. The VMs themselves need to get up to that level. Cool. Well, I'm going to continue looking through these questions, maybe type a few answers in. I don't see if there's anything else that's jumping out here that's easy to pick up from a live conversation.
Yeah, again, ask regarding the older version of vSphere. If you have a very old version of vSphere, HCX can do migration from technically any version of vSphere to VCF, to the latest and greatest. The only supported migration type there is OSAM, operating system assisted migration. So if you have very old 5.x, you might be running that you're looking into upgrading it, which is not supported anymore by VMware Broadcom. You can still use HCX, operating system assisted vMotion, to do that. Then again, the caveat is it's not going to be a live migration. and you'll require to include the agent in the operating system. But you can, HCX support that.
Yeah, one quick question came in, and I know this might be a little confusing. So Live Recovery, as I mentioned, is basically a recovery solution set on the VMware products. If you've been a VMware user, customer, administrator for a while and are familiar with Site Recovery Manager or SRM, that's been around, I think, 14 years. Last spring, I think it was March of 24, we essentially rebranded it for the most part. So Site Recovery Manager is now called VMware Live Site Recovery, and that's kind of what I was talking about here for the recovery use case for migration. The implementations are basically under the covers, still very much intact, very familiar. The names have changed a little bit, and obviously all of last year and moving into this year, the licensing methods and procurement of the products is probably the key thing that's changed. The functionality under the hood for Site Recovery Manager, SRM, has had a rebranding, and the licensing now fits into a larger scope of VMware Live Recovery. So if you're familiar with SRM, you'll be very familiar with VMware Live Site Recovery, and getting to the right version and licensing will probably be the biggest change you'll face.
Oh, looks like we have a good number of questions going. I think we've nibbled on a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and I'm sorry that a lot of these are sort of a longer and more complex answer than we have time for today. So big question: can we get you gentlemen back at some time to do this again? Sounds like the need is definitely there to have a deeper conversation on all this.
Sure.
Awesome. Absolutely.
I think as we roll into the VCF environment for this year, there'll be a lot of questions just coming from what's it called and where are things at. There was some questions that came in about what's available. Think of VCF as a full stack packaging and integration of a lot of things that and new things, but have been generally available. So but we might be calling them something different this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks
Awesome.
again for your participation. We try to answer a lot of questions. There's still few, and sorry if we couldn't get to it. But some of them are, it'll take a longer time to discuss these. So we'll definitely try to do a deeper dive sessions on this.
Yeah,
awesome.
I see a couple of questions coming in about isolated testing and ransomware recovery. Today's topic was migration, and we tried to do that as quickly as possible. We probably want to address some of the other big challenges for IT this year that will be addressed with current tools or things that are running in the VCF ecosystems as we move forward.
Awesome. All righty, folks. Well, thank you very much for joining. And again, thank you to the audience. Having you folks here and asking these questions really kind of helps us to understand where a lot of your needs are and adapt accordingly. So really good content today, and we will definitely try to get you guys back on the schedule here sooner rather than later again, because we definitely looks like we want to do a deep dive on some of this, and we'll hopefully have some additional information as we get further along in the year. So thanks again to everyone, and take care, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Again, check the upcoming schedule on the VMware.com webpage, and we'll keep you posted on further upcoming webinars as we get deeper into 25. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you all soon.